Just checking, are we live or do I have to press the button there?
We're live.
All right. Hey everyone. Hi relatives, folks. My name is Dallas Goldtooth. How am Chante Washte Nape Chius Apido, Yushkiawi Chiankapi, Wakamani Demiedo, and Chanshapi Otumi Hetchatahanwahi. My name is Dallas Goldtooth. I'm an organizer with the Indigenous Environmental Network. I am the Keep It in the Ground campaigner for IEN. And I want to welcome you to this webinar where we are going to be discussing Indigenous resistance, its impact, not only for the communities who are fighting various forms of fossil fuel extraction, but also its impact on the greater struggle to protect this planet from climate chaos. Not only just a few weeks ago, Indigenous Environmental Network, along with our partners, Oil Change International, came out with a report called the Indigenous Resistance Against Carbon Report. This was a report that we co-authored and worked on for a number of months. Oh, it's not streaming?
We're streaming.
It's streaming. It is not streaming. Okay. So this report is was an endeavor to really look at how we as Indigenous communities, as we stand up in defense of Mother Earth, how are we making a tangible impact for the better of all life on this planet, and how can we put it into words that our opponents can understand, that our allies can understand, and that we as Indigenous communities can understand how we are building something better for all of us, and how we are actually building power collectively. Because I'll just tell you right now, there are numerous fights all across this planet right now where Indigenous communities are on the front lines of protecting their homelands. Right now, as we speak, there are countless Indigenous communities who are experiencing state-sanctioned violence. There's communities who are experiencing murdered and missing Indigenous women and peoples. There are communities who are dealing with the impacts of fossil fuels poisoning their water, their air, their bodies. And those communities are also standing up in resistance and have been for generations. And so what we wanted to do with the Indigenous Resistance Against Carbon report is to show how can we put those into numbers that people can understand the impact. And that was the whole idea behind it. And on this webinar, we're going to hear from one of our partners with Oil Change International, who's going to talk about the research and the numbers behind the report. And then we're also going to go to a couple of our frontline land defenders, water protectors, who are holding it down in various places across what we call Turtle Island, what is currently called the United States and Canada. So I want to just thank you for this opportunity. You can read the report at the Indigenous Environmental Network's website at ienearth.org. That's ienearth.org. We have the report on our website. You can download it, you can share it, and please disseminate that as much as possible. This report was really based on the idea that our struggles are connected. And for many of us, for many of our relatives out there who have been fighting these projects, it can get very difficult at times. It's easy to feel isolated in our struggle. And I mean, we're going up against multinational corporations that have billions and billions of dollars. We're going up against governments and provinces and states who obviously care more about getting oil and gas out of the ground than asserting and recognizing Indigenous rights. And so it's time for us to really recognize the power of an Indigenous rights framework. It's absolutely essential for us to understand the context of our struggle to protect this planet and how the movement for free, prior and informed consent is essential in this path to get ourselves right with Mother Earth. So without further ado, I want to pass it over to my buddy Kyle Gracie with Oil Change International, who will help us break down and help you all break down what this report means and the data and research behind it. So I'll pass it to Kyle. You there?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dallas. And thanks, everybody. I am coming to you live from Climate Week in New York City, where, as Dallas was starting to say, some of the rhetoric from governments and corporations feels really far from what we know we need. It feels really far from what communities need, and it feels really, really far from the frontline struggles that are happening all over Turtle Island. And so that's why I was really excited, and we at Oil Change were really excited to be part of this report. You know, our whole goal at Oil Change International is to expose the real costs of fossil fuels to support our allies in their fights for climate justice. And so we had a sense, because we spend a lot of our time, I spent a lot of my time researching the climate impact, the greenhouse gas impact of fossil fuel infrastructure and fossil fuel projects. We had a sense that, you know, the impact from the struggles, the projects that are seeing all of this indigenous resistance was a big deal. But until we did the data, until we did the research, we didn't realize just how big of a deal it was. And what we found, just to give you kind of a preview of the big numbers, you know, is that looking at all of the projects across Turtle Island, looking at the projects that have already been stopped roughly in the last decade, and the projects that are experiencing resistance today that have a real chance of being stopped, the greenhouse gas impact from those projects, if we can prevent it, was about the same size as a quarter of all of the greenhouse gas pollution from the United States and Canada combined. So that's the magnitude of indigenous resistance that we're talking about, just from the climate perspective, let alone from the perspectives of protecting homelands, protecting territories, you know, all of the other important ways that indigenous resistance is defending the sacred land. But a quarter of the emissions from these two countries, that's huge. And not only is that huge, but half of that has already been stopped. Half of that comes from projects that were already defeated, and another half of that comes from projects that are being resisted today. Another half of that, if these struggles are successful, will be stopped. So that is the size of the impact that we are talking about. And we were just thrilled to see those numbers, but also terrified that this kind of a struggle is necessary. But it is, and it's incredible to see the scale of indigenous resistance, the outside impact that indigenous resistors are having on the fight for a safer climate and the fight for climate justice. And now I'm going to turn it over to the folks who are truly doing this work, who are on the front lines, because they're the folks you need to hear from most, not from me. Thanks, Dallas.
Yeah, I appreciate very much, Kyle. And thank you for Oil Change International for always holding it down on running the research and the numbers behind this movement to hold fossil fuels accountable, to hold the financiers of the fossil fuel industry accountable. So thank you so much for all the work that y'all are doing. And yeah, let's turn it over to hear from our frontline land defenders and water protectors who are in the thick of it in so many different ways. And to start us off, I want to go over to my sister, my relative Kanahus Manuel, up in so-called British Columbia under traditional territories, who's currently fighting and holding the line against the Trans Mountain Extension Pipeline project up in her regions. So Kanahus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you live from Secwepemcúlecw, from the tiny house warrior village here in so-called Blue River, British Columbia, Canada. We've been here for 3 years. This will be the 4th winter. We've been blocking and bringing attention to the man camp that they want to build here in Blue River, right along one of our most pristine rivers. Trans Mountain is a pipeline project that wants to plow through over 1,150 kilometers of unceded Indigenous territories, coming from the Alberta tar sands via the Edmonton terminal to the Westridge Marine Terminal down in the Coast Salish territories in the Salish Sea, in hopes that they fill 400 tankers up a year to, bring to this global market along the West Coast, down into the Washington State, Oregon, and California, to California refineries, and then off to the global market. This is diluted bitumen. It's one of the worst, heaviest type of oil, and it's coming from the Alberta tar sands, one of the biggest, sacrifice zones in the world. They call it one of the biggest, largest industrial project known to mankind. You could see it from Google Earth. You could see the amount, and we hear the calls of our sisters and our brothers from the north, in and around the Alberta tar sands, that have been telling us for years, just the impacts around the health impacts, the spiritual, cultural, the traditional food impacts. And it's spewing its way down here into a so-called British Columbia. Here, fighting this man camp, we've had an escalation of violence at the hands of the Trans Mountain security and the Trans Mountain employees. Everyone could recall Dakota Access Pipeline and Tiger Swan. Well, it's the same thing happening right here. They're hiring former RCMP of 30 years to head out the security detail for Trans Mountain. They're putting major efforts into the security detail and pushing the criminalization of Indigenous land defenders. The other day, we had a violent attack, which will be coming out in some exclusive footage very soon, to expose what's really happening. This Trans Mountain pipeline, it affects more than just the environment. It affects our way of life. Right now, just minutes ago, Trans Mountain was laying mud boards over our blueberry picking areas just right here. The blue fence, or the blue tarp, is actually privacy fence for us, because they had Trans Mountain security and police just right on the other side of that blue tarp, peeping in and creeping to take a look at us every step of our daily, we're right here. You can see we have 5 tiny houses on wheels. That's who we are. We've been used that as our biggest stance, as putting these tiny houses on wheels to assert our Secwepemc title rights in our jurisdiction, our land, and our self-determination here. This is bigger than a pipeline fight. This is a freedom fight. We're building homes and we're taking back land. And it's scary for Canada when they see Indigenous people leaving the reserve to take back land, but also fighting, a pipeline that they purchased. Indigenous people here in so-called British Columbia, we have a unique stance in that we've never signed any treaties with the colonial government, and we still hold our land as unceded and unsurrendered. And you could really see it in the stance of the warriors here, because we've always remained unceded, in this mentality that we will never negotiate with the government for our land. We know it's ours, and we're going to continue to stand by it. And I think that's the biggest threat that Canada faces, is the stance that Indigenous people take, this unwavering stance that we're not going to go anywhere. We're here to stay, and we'll remain here till the last person in our nation is left breathing and alive. We're going to continue to fight for our land. Kanahus Manuel.
I appreciate you so much, Kanahus, for the work that y'all are doing and the efforts and the risks that you're taking. Before I switch over to the next person, while we have you, what are ways folks can follow, and how can people learn about your struggle more, and also how can they donate to the movement if that's something y'all are open to?
Yes, we're going to be launching a legal fund, just because of the amount of charges that we're accumulating now, just with the direct action, and just from basically being here, bringing attention, using our voice is leading us and landing us with charges. It's so ridiculous. They have a province-wide injunction on us. So our legal fund is going to be raised through our website, tinyhousewarriors.com. Is a way, there's a donation link on that website that people could donate to. And we have Instagram, official Tiny House Warriors, and myself. Kanahus, you could find me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And yeah, just look at hashtag Tiny House Warriors. You'll see a lot of the Tiny House Warriors in their personal accounts, and follow them. Aisha, Mayuk, Snitatwa, and Ida, and 515 Warriors. So there's some who we started Tiny House Warriors with was mainly the Secwepemc Women Warrior Society. I'd like to also mention that. And we're all mothers, and we're all freedom fighters. And the biggest thing is that we are mothers, where we look after our children while we're on the front line. And so it's a big job, and we're not going to stop. We're teaching our children. So that's where it's at, is teaching the babies so they can continue on to protect our land. Thank you.
Wupida Pidamiodo Kanahus. We're coming back to you in a little bit for a quick panel discussion with some questions for that folks. Those of you watching may be able to ask questions. We're monitoring we have folks on Zoom, but we're also monitoring potential questions on Facebook. So if you have any questions, leave them in the chat and we'll try our best to keep track of them. At this time, I want to pass it over to my relative, Taysha Martineau. Taysha is a land defender, water protector, and one of the co-founders of Camp McGeezy up on the frontline camp, resistance camp against the Line 3 pipeline. Is an Enbridge pipeline project that is proposed and is being constructed as we speak, and crossing sacred territories, sacred lands, wild rice beds of the Anishinaabe peoples, significant food source for both Anishinaabe and Dakota Oyate peoples. And so I want to pass it over to you, Taysha, to let us know about your struggle, your fight, and share with us. Taysha, you're muted.
Oh man, now I got to start all over. All right. Bonjour, Tabiki Giza, Skijikwe, Indishnakas, Nagachiwanang, Indunjiba, Megazito Autumn. Hello, everyone. My name is Taysha Martineau. I come from the Fond du Lac Reservation. I am a two-spirit Indigenous anarchist. And I'm just kind of fangirling right now. I have like so much love and respect for Kanahus. And, it was the Tiny House Warriors who inspired me, to start my camp here at Camp McGeezy and, fight for our rights and fight for our land and our water. And I just feel so humbled and honored to be here sharing space with all of these amazing people who have been doing the work for so long. So January 2020, we got the land, or maybe it was 2020. Yeah, January 2021, we purchased 10 acres of land on the Fond du Lac Reservation, right next to the Enbridge Line 3 easement. And from that point forward, we've just been fighting back every single day. There have been people climbing into trenches, climbing into the pipes, locking down to machinery, standing in the road so that the machines can't cross. It's been nonviolent direct action every single day, and I wasn't active during Standing Rock. My resistance was born from all of the amazing matriarchal women who came before me, all of those women that I've been able to learn from, women like Kanahus, women like Tarahuska, women like LaDonna. And I watched and I learned, and, we started our own camp, and, we've been out here ever since. And we are currently the most controversial camp in the Line 3 fight. And that's not because of, the slander or the rumors, that lateral violence that, us frontline resistors have to face with all the time. It's because we built our resistance right in the heart of the very community that approved the Line 3 project. My reservation that I'm an enrolled tribal member of is the community that, sold out to the Enbridge Corporation. They were forced into a Sophie's choice. And, I knew from the get-go that would put me in a position where I would have to fight my community, but it's like the Manuel family has said, nobody does this work because they want to. They do it because they have to. And, that's true. There's so much division in my community now because of this corporation, because of this project. And it's like a lot of them are really uneducated. They don't realize that, this oil is being sent here from, being sent all the way across the ocean. It's not going to make it to our community at all. It's coming from Alberta, Canada, to be refined in Superior, Wisconsin. And it's just the devastation that these pipelines and these oil companies have caused already in so-called Canada has been, absolutely astounding. The fact that, Indigenous women keep going missing at a higher rate than any other demographic, and nobody bats an eye. Nobody holds these corporations accountable. And it got to the point where we realized that we had to be the ones to do it. And, at Camp McGeezy, we're a completely two-spirit, femme-led movement. We are mostly BIPOC. We are mostly queer. And, that also puts us at odds with law enforcement. They brutalize us faster, especially those of us who carry melanin in our skin. Even our own tribal officers, they're not too fond of the fact that our camp is full of Lakota people. And these are their traditional homelands as well. I recognize that here in so-called Minnesota, I'm on the treaty territories of my people, the Anishinaabe, but I'm also on the ancestral homelands of the Lakota, Nakota, and Dakota people. And at Camp McGeezy, in order for us to truly be, decolonial, in order for us to truly believe in land back, we need to recognize, that that's the reality, that, when our Lakota, Nakota, Dakota relatives were removed from the state of Minnesota, we should be welcoming them home. we should be welcoming them home so that we can all continue to fight for this water, fight for these lands, fight for that rice out there. You know, we're here in an area where wild rice grows naturally. You know, nowhere else in the world does it grow naturally like that. It's why we're here as a people, as Anishinaabe. You know, we are that wild rice. And we're supposed to be, you know, looking forward to the next 7 generations. You know, I have a almost 2-year-old son, and I can't even promise him that he's going to grow up gathering wild rice. If, you know, if any of those pipes, you know, leak anywhere along Minnesota, it's over for us, especially here on my reservation, where the Army Corps of Engineers has connected all of our bodies of water in order so that we could control, you know, the levels of the water when they first came out here digging around and messed up our rice lakes. And now they want to throw all these pipelines through our lands. We already have so many pipelines and we only have so much land. And, you know, it's our duty as Indigenous people to do our due diligence to protect the sacred. You know, at Standing Rock, everyone was shouting Mini-Wachoni, but Mini-Wachoni isn't just a hashtag. It isn't just a rallying cry. You know, protect the sacred isn't just about protesting a pipeline. It's about recognizing it's a spiritual law that each and every single one of us need to be doing our best in order to be good stewards of the land and ensure a safer, more viable future for our children so that our children can have children. And at the rate that it's going, you know, there's these climate crisis and these Indigenous fights, front lines all over. If we don't stand up and if we don't fight back, none of us are going to be here longer. You know, and at Camp Migizi, you know, we stand in solidarity with Indigenous resistance all across Turtle Island. You know, we're a direct action camp, and, you know, we owe that resiliency that we've learned and that we've flourished with to all of those who came before us. So again, I just want to say thank you all for welcoming me here into the space. And I want to send a shout out to the Tiny House Warriors for, you know, teaching me what it really means to be an Indigenous woman and to stand strong for what you believe in. Thank you all.
Hey, Taysha, appreciate you. Before we move on to our next speaker, I want to ask you, how do folks follow along? Like, where can people go to learn about, you know, your camp and how they can help support you?
So we do have Facebook and Instagram on social media. I believe we also have a Twitter account, and you know, we do a lot of work with Lakota People Law Project. So you can follow us on either or Lakota People Law Project or Camp Migizi. You know, our phones are on 24/7. We're able to answer calls, help you get out here to the front line if you're interested in coming on out. And yeah, we just look forward to meeting so many amazing people in this journey, and hopefully, you know, gearing up to help assist in all of those other front lines that are happening around us. As we're coming to the end of the Line 3 fight, you know, we're ready and prepared and willing to join the front line elsewhere and continue that resistance that's been burning inside us as Indigenous people for over 500 plus years now.
Wopida Taysha for all your support, or all your work and efforts in support of all these other fights, and much love to all our land defenders, water protectors who are still holding the line on Line 3. If the fight's not over, the fight's still ongoing. Active resistance is happening right now. Just as a context, within all of this, we are talking about the Indigenous Resistance Against Carbon report. This is a report that the Indigenous Environmental Network, along with Oil Change International, put out that really elevated the connection between Indigenous struggles for self-determination, Indigenous rights, and free, prior, and informed consent, with tangible impacts on stopping fossil fuels and greenhouse gas emissions. And you can check out the report at ienearth.org. That's ienearth.org to learn more about it. I want to pass it over to our next speaker. I'm really excited to have her on. Love Sanchez is a relative that I'm still getting to know, and I'm so excited to hear about the work that's happening in the Gulf Coast region of the so-called United States. Love Sanchez is with the Indigenous peoples of the Coastal Bend, and is going to be speaking to us about some of the issues that they're going through right now with the expansion of export terminals down in the Gulf Coast area of so-called Texas. And so, Love, I'm so happy to have you on, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Dallas. I'm a little sick right now. I'm drinking some tea. My sister gave me some herbs, so my voice is kind of messed up. Um, I'm really grateful to be on this panel with the other two women. I just want to say that this is awesome and y'all are amazing. I've been watching all the fights for a very long time and I fully support everything that y'all do. And so just to tell you all a little about where I'm from, my name is Love Sanchez. I am from the unceded territory of the Coranqua, the Comanche, the Tanqua, the Colantecan, and the Carrizo. And so here in so-called Texas, specifically Corpus Christi, Texas, we have the largest export terminal, oil crude export terminal in our bay. And our bay is super small. So currently right now, we are trying to prevent expansion from happening in our area. And so this specific site that we've been protecting is my ancestor's site. Over 80,000 artifacts were found in just 1 acre out of 432 acres. And were spread across who knows where in Texas and universities and museums. So who knows when we'll see those again. But so that was one of the reasons why we got involved. We had been already involved for a long time in environmental work and Indigenous rights in our area. And we thought, you know what, this is not right. You know, the way they're just expanding on our land here. And there's very little left of undeveloped land here. When you look, we have a refinery road here. You're at a beach, you see a terminal out there in the shore, and it's horrible, the expansion that's happening here. So currently, we are in a lawsuit with MODA. However, MODA was bought by Enbridge, and here we are. Enbridge is coming over here. They're already the largest transporter of crude oil, and they just purchased the largest export of crude oil. And so we don't know what's going to happen. You know, they're a potential plaintiff in the case, and this is the only method that we could even take anyway, because our Texas sucks. Like, we have a law that's HB 3557 that is like a felony if you even like step in front of their gate. And so they were doing this around when Standing Rock was happening. They were just going along with other states, I guess, but I guess they were also being proactive because they knew that people were going to resist against what they were about to bring to our area. And so the only avenue that we thought was, you know what, we could challenge them in court. Like a lot of other Indigenous people that I've seen, it's always about that 404 permit of dredging. You know, here in so-called United States, that 404 is always something that Indigenous people are trying to prevent from happening so that it won't desecrate the land. And so it's no surprise that here we are doing the same thing. And so, like I mentioned, Enbridge bought the potential defendant that we're in court with right now. And so we've just been monitoring what they've been doing within about 2 weeks within the purchase. The purchase is not final, by the way. It's going to be final by the end of the year, and they're going to change the name from MODA to Enbridge. But within these 2-3 weeks span, they were shooting out press releases and stuff. And recently, we just caught on to the fact that they're going to purchase additional land that we already are protecting on the east side of this huge undeveloped area. And they want to build wind farms and carbon capture. And so they're trying to greenwash what they're doing. These companies are always trying to mitigate, like, oh yeah, we're gonna bring green energy and blah, blah, blah. And like, hey, you know what, you're not doing nothing but destroying the area and polluting. So just keeping an eye on them. You know, the fact that we have the largest export terminal here in the nation, it's very disturbing because our bay is super small, and a lot of investors are coming over here. Our port is like, you know, trying to pitch like, hey, this is the area to bring your business kind of thing. And there's like no room to build here, you know what I mean? And so we're just gonna keep going. We're gonna keep on going with this lawsuit. Right now, they're not dredging on the area. But it doesn't matter. Like, that's 432 acres of undeveloped land that I mean, only 1 acre produced 80,000 artifacts and remains. So who's to say the other 431, you know what I mean? We don't want that to be touched. And then the fact that all these industries are coming, this one specifically, if the pier is built, it's gonna destroy the area, but not only the artifacts and the potential, our ancestors that are buried within that area, it's gonna destroy the seabeds in the area. And we have a large seagrass system here, over 14,000 acres of seagrass in our area, and it supplies nutrients to the entire bay. So when these dredging projects start happening, I was about to cuss, my bad. They like are messing up the area, the seagrass, and yeah. So that's what we're doing currently. And I had a presentation. I wanted to show you like this trifecta stuff that's happening. We made all these connections with different entities in the area. We also have Exxon Sabic in our area, which is the largest. It's going to be the largest plastic producing cracker in the world. It's another disturbing thing. Since our bay is so small, they're going to be producing petrochemicals and LNG, and this terminal is going to be an access point for them to be able to send out internationally stuff. And so that's what we're dealing with over here. And it's a lot, but I'm still going. Me and my sore throat, we're going to keep going.
Hey, Love, we send you the greatest amount of love and energy to
I
you
thank
and
y'all
your
so
struggle.
much.
Appreciate you for being on this call, on this webinar. How can folks learn more about your group and support the work that you're doing?
Okay, so we have like a little website going on. We're gonna upgrade it. It's stopmodanow.com. It says that right now because Moda is still Moda. Enbridge is not gonna change the name to Enbridge until the end of the year. So we're gonna be making a lot of edits to that. So it's stopmodanow.com is a good place. It has the majority of information so far, what I just talked about. And then we have a group page that's pretty active. That's Indigenous Peoples of the Coastal Bend. And we also have an Instagram that's pretty active also. And it's the same name.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Love. You know, just a reminder for folks who are just tuning in, we have a number of frontline water protectors, land defenders here who are a part of this bigger movement to hold fossil fuel companies in the states who sanction them accountable for the violations of Indigenous rights, for the violation of human rights, for putting our relatives, men, women, folks all along the gender spectrum at greater risk for sexual violence, domestic violence, and just violence overall, who are raping and pillaging our territories and lands for the benefit of a few against the detriment of many. And so, you know, I want to just honor our relatives in this space where we are holding this conversation within the context of this new report that we put out called Indigenous Resistance Against Carbon Report, that we stated before, Native folks, we've stopped and held back over a quarter of greenhouse gas emissions from some of the two like mega polluters of this planet. Like we did that shit. And I know you held back, but I'm not going to hold back on that. Like that's something we honor. We got to celebrate that. But we also have to recognize that these fights are ongoing. There are folks that are on the front line right now. They're putting their lives on the line. And we want to continue to support and help our folks as much as possible. I want to open it up to questions at this point. So folks, if you have questions for our panelists, like those who are on Zoom, you can leave a question, ask a question in the Zoom. If you're on Facebook, feel free to leave a question on Facebook. We have folks monitoring that, and we can try to answer your questions as best as possible. While people are preparing to do that, I want to give a shout out to an upcoming action that a lot of our folks are connected to that we're building towards. And if you are asking yourself, what is something I can do? How can I help our folks? How can we help our frontline communities and also the planet overall? Well, there's an action that we are a part of, that many communities are a part of, called People versus Fossil Fuels. It's a week of action starting on October 11th through the 15th. And it's going to be in Washington, D.C., at the doorstep of the decision makers that hold a lot of power around the expansion of fossil fuels in so-called United States of America. That's the White House. So from October 11th to October 15th, that's like 2.5 weeks away. We are descending upon the Washington, D.C., bringing our stories, bringing our narratives as frontline communities, and asking our supporters and allies to stand with us and risk arrest to elevate our issues to the decision makers who are killing our communities, who are polluting our planet. And so you can learn more about this action at peopleversusfossilfuels.org. That's an action that's coming up. We're asking folks to sign up if you can. Come stand with our frontline communities and help support this greater struggle to stop the expansion of fossil fuels. I want to go to a question that was asked in Zoom. And so at this point, it's like whoever wants to ask, but I know like we started with Love, so I might go to Kanahus. You haven't spoken in a while. It's like, if you want to take it, go by all means, but we'll just we'll go freestyle on this. You know, we got no necessary rules here. But the question is, money and corporations have no ears. They don't really listen. But there might be some ears in the current administration. So I'm thinking that they might be talking about, like, you know, whether it's President or Prime Minister Trudeau, or it might be President Biden. Will they stand and fight? Will they actually stand up in defense of our communities? I'm paraphrasing that question because I'm trying to do it best. So I guess Kanahus, like, let teach folks what's the situation with the state of Canada and your struggle to protect your homelands. Like, where does it stand right now?
I think that the only thing that they understand is money, and that once you're able to quantify it into actually show the financial risk or the financial, or like this report, actually quantify it to show that our resistance is causing either risk to their projects or to their investment, or actually protecting the land. Like this report says, we're actually, you know, benefiting the earth, the whole entire earth, by our resistance. And once you're able to quantify it with this data, I think it's very important, because then you can't hide behind it. You can't hide behind the fact that we're here fighting back. And one of the things that Trudeau will always do is put on a press conference and say reconciliation, or put his fake tears on and make it look like he's for Indigenous rights when he never has been. My father and my grandfather both faced off of both of the Trudeaus. You know, my grandfather faced off with Pierre Elliott Trudeau. So it's in the family to continue to fight them. I don't know why we're going to stop now when he's still not recognizing our title and rights here in the so-called country.
Thank you, Kanahus. I want to pass it to Love or Taysha. Any thoughts on the faith of elected leaders, or what is the role there?
Go ahead. Or yeah, I agree. Biden's not doing anything, but I've heard talk. She could go ahead and go, and I'll piggyback off of her.
So, as an Indigenous anarchist, I personally do not hold any hope that, you know, the great chief of the white people are gonna do anything to save me. You know, I don't believe in politicians. I don't believe in the system. I believe that, you know, the system is working as it's designed to. And that's by taking the resources, taking the land, and even taking, you know, BIPOC people from other areas of, you know, this beautiful world that we all are a part of. And I don't see cheaters ever being honored. I know, huh? I don't see Biden or Trudeau giving any care to the Indigenous people.
Oh, baby. Yeah, so to piggyback off of what she said, this is the first time I'm ever saying this, and I'm super grateful that there's space for this. Biden ain't doing shit for us. He did the same thing our mayor did here in Corpus. We had a local group for the greater good make this awesome petition, like, you know, power of the people kind of thing, got like 5,000 people in our city that are our city's super conservative, but the fact that our potential running mayor saw that, oh crap, like these people have 5,000 people, she used like our, like, how do you say, our environmental like stance, and was like, just like every politician does, oh, we're gonna do this, yeah, we got your back kind of thing. as soon as 6 months went in, she was already like, yeah, no, I don't know, going against everything. And that's what every politician has done to me, or in like the way Tasha just said, like, that's my perspective also. So I really don't know what to say about politicians. It's they say something and then they don't follow through. So I think following through is something they got to start doing, or just give the land back already.
That's what's up. I appreciate that. Just saying it, both, all of you, all three of you, bringing the power about the truth, like laying down the truth of the struggle of our experience. And really, like, the way I see it is that, I mean, I can't say any better. Like one is that what we're going up against is more than just environmental justice issues. It's more than just environmental fights. We're going up against white supremacy. We're facing off against ongoing colonization of our lands and territories, our languages, and our bodies. We're going up against continued violence that's perpetrated against all aspects of our culture and our societies. That's what we're facing. That's what that is the opponent, and that we can't have much faith in the elected leaders to make changes, because their very survival is dependent on the continuation of those situations, of the very continuation of that violence. And so I really thank you all for bringing that truth into this space. I want to just also list this out, just say this for folks, just throwing out more facts. Right now, the Biden administration is outpacing the Trump administration in the approval of fracking on public lands. I'll say that again. The Biden administration is outpacing the Trump administration in their monthly approvals of fracking on public lands. The Biden administration has refused to do anything to stop the construction of the Line 3 pipeline, the Enbridge Line 3 pipeline. A pipeline, when completed, will equal 50 coal-fired power plants on a yearly basis. Like, the Biden administration has approved project after project in one space, but in front of the media has said, "Oh, we're good. We are doing our best. We're taking climate action." Well, for those of us on the ground, or for those communities on the ground, our relatives who are in the trap of this fight, they're calling them out for the bullshit. And it's time for us to uphold the elected leaders in this fight. So I want to go back over, ask any of our speakers to speak up on speak up to the question from our allies of, like, hey, they can't go to the front lines. What can they do to support your struggle? Like, those that are, for whatever reason, aren't able to travel to your communities to help support you and stand physically there, what can they do to help you out? I'll pass it up to our relative Kanahus.
There's so much things that our allies and supporters can do. First, you had mentioned it before, arrestables. Arrestables are needed because we're targeted so much. Like, I don't even want to get arrested, and somehow they want to arrest me over every single little thing out there and charge me off of politically bogus charges. So yeah, we do need arrestables to take the direct action needed in order to delay this pipeline. Right now, here on Trans Mountain, it's about delaying this pipeline. There's many other ways to help. There's permits that still need to be approved through the BC Oil and Gas Commission and other permitting bodies, provincial and federal, that could be stopped. Stand.earth has a list of those permits. There's so much ways to throw monkey wrenches into the system to actually stop and delay this construction, whether it's through the paperwork, the permitting, or whether it's actually throwing a monkey wrench into these machines and getting them to stop working. We need everything at this point, and I believe in diversity of tactics, and that we need to really promote the diversity of tactics. There was the hummingbird women, I call them, and these are two settler non-native women that used the nesting period of the hummingbird and the chickadee and everything to stop the clear cutting for the pipeline route, and this stopped clear cutting for like 2 or 3 months. So there's so much ways that people could get involved to actually delay, and we need the creativity of activists, but also just everyday Canadians and down there American citizens to be intuitive and creative in how they're going to stop the pipeline. Artists, singers, dancers, opera singers, ballet dancers, whatever it is. Yes, we need you. Be creative in your resistance, because it will delay, it will stop, anything that will delay and stop, we need your help right now. Lawyers, anybody that wants to give any of their skill set. One of the things that the Unistoten camp does when they go in there, their living law, the free, prior, informed consent. Who are you? Like, announce yourself. Where are you coming from? What type of, if we allow you to come in our territory, what skills do you have to offer? And how will you make our nation a better place by being there? And those are the questions everybody has to ask. What skills do you have to offer? And then let's put you to work. Thank you. Reach out. We'll put.
Kanahus, I want to ask you one quick follow, because I know you can speak on it. I know you're all have been very active on it. What's the role of banks and insurance providers, and like what potential actions could folks do that can't go to the front lines?
Yeah, I think Stop the Money Pipeline, Amazaka Talks, they have a list of insurance or banks. I know banks. I'm not sure about the insurance company. I think Rainforest Action Network has a list of the insurance companies. They've been staying on top of that. It was one of the biggest, pushes that my father, left us with. And that was like targeting the insurance companies, which everyone says was a brilliant, idea to fight, because everything needs insurance. And by going to these international insurance companies over in Europe and Zurich and Paris, it really shook that financial institution and that system up when you go over there, especially, native people from unceded land, and you're talking that Canada doesn't have the title or deed to land, it wakes them up. And so, yeah, supporting delegations to continue to go on these divestment tours to these banks and insurance companies is very important. They need financing. And one of the things that it's starting to be proven more and more is that we are actually causing a financial risk and liability to these projects, and it's being quantified. And so insurance companies and banks are even taking extra notice on Indigenous resistance. So the more we keep it up, the more that these banks and insurance companies are going to refuse to underwrite them and to finance them. So keep up the good work, everybody. Chubb just withdrew their insurance from Trans Mountain. Thank you.
Yes, I want to just honor that. Chubb is one of the largest insurance providers on the planet, and because of the great work of the tiny house warriors, of all the relatives along the line who have been speaking up, one of the largest insurance providers in the world backed out support of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and that happened because of land defenders and water protectors. It happened because a lot of youth took a chance and took risks and got arrested, exposing that company for supporting the violation of human rights and Indigenous rights. So hats off to all our folks on that, and that's what it's about. We're seeing results because of this struggle. I want to pass it up to Taysha, if you have any comments and thoughts about folks who want to support, who might not be able to be there or travel up that way. What advice do you have?
So there's a lot of things that people could do, from solidarity actions to helping spread the word. Follow our social media, uplift our voices, share our actions, share our Venmos. If you can't get here to the front lines and you have access to wealth, there are things that are always needed. We need to winterize for, the cold weather that is coming soon. We're always in need of gas funds. We're always in need of, you can help feed the front line as well. But yeah, Wells Fargo and Bank of America are the two of the most prominent supporters of this project. If you can't get to the front line, I want you to make a front line near you. I want you to ensure that no business is going through those banks, and let them know why. Let them know that you're there to stop Line 3. Tell them that they need to stop funding, the genocide of Indigenous people. We also are calling upon the workers themselves of these corporations. We're here to free you from your obligation to assist in the genocide of Indigenous people. We're here to help you, pull away from that subcontract. We're here to free you of those obligations. You have the right to ethical pay. You have the right to, demand of your foreman more ethical work that isn't harming Indigenous people. And that's what's needed at this point. The workers themselves have been contacting us about their concerns about this project. We've had people quit just to join us on the front line. And, when it gets to the point where Indigenous people are locking themselves to the front gates of the governor's mansion because our elected officials aren't hearing us. We need you to call your elected officials as well. You know, ask them if they've heard about Line 3, because at the end of the day, you know, these projects, they're not just going to affect us here in Minnesota. You know, these projects aren't going to affect just those relatives up in so-called Canada. You know, these projects are going to affect each and every single one of us. And we have the right to fight for a safer, more viable future for our children. We have the right to demand that the people that we put into power answer us. And if they don't, then we need to stand up and fight back. We need to take back everything they told our grandmothers that they could not have. And, you know, that's why we're calling for people to join us, you know, in Washington, D.C. on Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you so much, Taysha. I'll pass it down to Love. You know, Love, in my time as an organizer, I've come to know, realize that oftentimes a lot of people are willing to put energy in fights where that they see as quote unquote winnable, right? Like, oh, this fight is a winnable fight because it's in a predominantly like liberal area and we can get the folks to change their mind. And what I've come to realize and recognize is that mentality, what it does is it reinforces sacrifice zones. It reinforces, say, oh, that means that there's some places that we can't, there's no winnable situation there. Oh, they're screwed. And I often, to be absolutely honest, like that's the dominant narrative I hear all the time about relatives in the Gulf Coast, relatives along the Gulf Coast region of Texas and Louisiana, which is literally the heart of the oil and gas industry of the United States. That like, and so I want to ask you, like, speaking from the belly of the beast, like what is it about this struggle that people need to understand, and the work that you all are doing down there, and how can folks support if they can't be there in person?
Okay, so because I'm in court, I'm going to say I am not suggesting people to go and protest. I'm not suggesting people to go on their property on critical infrastructure and support us. And I'm not saying, you know, destroy stuff. Being sarcastic though. Anyway, but my point of that little joke was that there's a lot going on here, like you mentioned, and if people want to do that type of resistance, you know, hell yeah. It sucks that I'm in court because the lawyers are like, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm like, okay. And then it sucks that we live in Texas and how we have this stupid critical infrastructure law going on. And I really am super like inspired by the other women on here and what they're doing. Super badass. What we're going through over here, like you mentioned, you know, we got a lot of export oil going on. Texas is it's a red state, considered conservative, so they're all about oil. They don't take in consideration nothing. They don't listen to the people that are resisting, that are saying no. And like I mentioned earlier, our bay is super small. They're over here building, and it's crazy. Like they don't care that there's people saying no. They don't even care that Indigenous people are saying no. And that should be priority for anywhere across any of this land. It should be priority. Like, what did those people feel? Like these were the first, their ancestors were here first and they are still here. What do they think about the area? And then even with their policies that say they have to go and get consent, or they have to go and talk to us about what we feel about the area, they don't do it. They don't do it. So we do have a lot of NIMBYs in our area that are like, no, not in our backyard, put it somewhere else, kind of thing. That's even worse. You're putting it in another undeveloped area that, you know, that has marine life and animals and, you know, a lot of fish. We're very known for our fish in our bays. Our fish are not even in our bay no more. They're like going towards out more offshore, because the closer you are to our shoreline, the water is like, it's dead, it's dying slowly. And so we're trying very hard over here. Everything that the other women said, yes, do all that, everything, all those and more. I shared Kanahus post one time about skill set, and it was crazy because about a week later, lawyers were coming around, and I was like, oh my God, like, I guess that your post inspired them, because we were like going down the road of like, what do we do? Nobody wants to help. I mean, God, just, we don't even need money. Just bring like the fact that you're smart at something. And then lawyers are like, hey, you know, and I was like, oh, let's do it. Let's go to court. And so here we are. So yeah, all I ask is just, you know, reach out, and like kind of who said, your skill set, everybody has skills to provide.
All right, thank you so much, Love, for that. And thank you for everybody that's joining. I want to wrap it up because I know we're taking time away from a lot of you, our water protectors, our land defenders, from the women on this call. You have your own struggles and things are going on. I'll say that if you want to know more, for folks that are watching, on how to, like, we posted links in the Zoom, but I know on Facebook you might not see those links. And so later after this, once this presentation is over, we're going to post update a new post on our Facebook, on IEN's Facebook, with as many of the links that were referenced here. And in the chat for folks watching are all the links to the groups that you can follow now, but we'll try to keep people posted so that you can follow along and support these amazing women in the work that they're doing. And like, that's something that hasn't been stated, but in Love, I think you laid it out though, is like this struggle that we are part of is beautiful, but it's also being led by Indigenous women, by queer folks, by femmes. Like this is a powerful movement that is being led by powerful people. And we need to recognize that shit. We need to recognize the impact of this. And the report the context of this report, I mean, I'm in plugging this report, but really we have to plug these folks and the work that they're doing. And we're just trying to show that we don't, it's not just a matter of like Native folks have the moral high ground. Like, no, we have the political high ground. We have the legal high ground. Our treaty rights are holding that ground. Our original, our rights, our inherent rights are holding that ground, because a lot of our tribes, especially in so-called British Columbia, never even had treaty. They never even ceded territories. They never gave up their land in any way. Like, our Indigenous rights have to be recognized. The settler states have to uphold those rights and recognize those rights. But we also are not fools. We know that path is slim chances that the settler state, as it currently stands, is going to recognize those. That's why we have to fight nonstop to protect our homelands, protect our communities, and protect the future. So if you want to learn more, check out all the Facebook pages and links to all these groups. You can follow along at ienearth.org. We do our best to uplift these ongoing struggles and hold colonizers and settlers accountable for their transgressions against our communities, our lands, our ways of living. And if you are able to throw down, and if you're interested to come to Washington, D.C. and support us, a lot of our frontline communities, on Indigenous Peoples Day or for the entire week, go to peopleversusfossilfuels.org to learn more on how you can support. I'm going to actually share a screen of the action, People versus Fossil Fuels. We're asking folks within so-called United States and of course allies elsewhere can join in, but this is really a concentrated effort to put pressure right on the Biden administration to hold him accountable for misdirecting, for creating misdirection by saying they're going to take climate action, but not really doing it. And so we are going to be holding the line and holding them accountable for inaction. And so I want to see if you are interested to know more, go to peopleversusfossilfuels.org to sign up, to throw down, or see how you can uplift that. Shout out to Oil Change International, who is an organization that helped us co-author the Indigenous Resistance Against Fossil Fuel, against Carbon report. Much love to them. And thank you all for joining. Appreciate it. I want to ask Love, or Kanahus, or Taysha, do you all have final words? I'll pass to Kanahus first and go to Taysha after that. So Kanahus, do you have any final words for us?
Yeah, I want to say that our resistance is woven into all of the resistance that we're facing on all of the front lines, you know, murdered or missing Indigenous women, but also our children apprehension and just, you know, just the how people are being treated now during COVID, and all of these people that are fighting all these different struggles across Canada. They reach out to me because they need assistance always. So when I put calls out for mutual aid requests, it's always going to other front lines that don't receive the type of support needed. So even when I personally put out mutual aid requests, that's to help other front lines. So there's invisible front lines that people don't see, but trust me, there's people fighting on a daily basis for our self-determination as Indigenous people. And I want to say thank you to all of them out there, all of them that have gotten arrested in the Line 3 fight and the Trans Mountain fight and all these front lines, you know, all those water protectors and land defenders and warriors. Shout out to them and give a big Cooks Jam thank you.
Awesome. Taysha, pass it to you, sister. Oh, I think we actually lost Taysha, so we'll go over to Love.
Yeah, my throat hurts.
Oh, it's all good. I don't want to put it on you.
I just want to say thank you to the women that I already mentioned it, I know, but it's very inspiring watching y'all. And thank y'all for the space giving to us over here to talk about what's happening over here. So thank you very much.
Wopi Tataka Chichiapido, thank you. The deepest gratitude to all our speakers and to those of you watching. I hope you have a good night. See you later. Doksha Kewa Chiankapido.